because he's driving and he's going to hit something, and he tells the kid riding with him, right or left, chemo, right or left, so anyway. So I think we get to that place in our life where we have to make a decision. And I think we've said this before, poop or get off the pot before your legs fall asleep, right? And
great analogy.
Okay, thanks. But I
don't think it's poop that we use.
Coming to you from 125 Carver in Waco, Texas, it's the Riverside Weekly. We hope your time with us today is thought-provoking, spiritually challenging, and a life-changing experience. Our discussions are fun, real, and at times very uncomfortable. We highly encourage all of our guests and listeners to like and subscribe, and please ring the bell. Now, here are your hosts, Pastor Cello and Pastor Mia.
welcome, everybody. Welcome to the podcast. It's Wednesday. Yay! There you go. I was waiting for that.
I was just messing with you.
I was like,
good morning. How's
what
everybody doing, man? Thank you
happened?
guys for tuning in again. All our listeners on Spotify. I was going to say Pandora's Box. Pandora, Twitch, iHeartRadio.
I don't know what this Twitch
iTunes.
is.
It's a podcast. There's
Okay,
people that
all I
watch
think
podcasts.
about when you say Twitch is Ellen DeGeneres' DJ. That's
Oh.
his name. And he always danced and stuff.
Okay, anyway. Well, that's not who I'm talking about.
Okay.
Anyway, so welcome. Thanks you guys for listening. All you guys that are listening, all you guys that are watching. Thanks for watching on our app. Thanks to all of our Patreon supporters, man.
Ooh, yay.
I appreciate you guys for kicking it.
Wait.
Yep. Thank you guys so much. So here we are. It's Wednesday morning. It's hot in Texas. I'm not sure where you are right now, but Texas heat is just now getting going. We just pushed our 3 digits, triple digits. It's agony.
And shout out to the people in Tucson because their tarmac was so hot at a time that the planes couldn't even take off.
That's a couple years ago.
We're thankful for barely hitting the triple
But
digits and not living there.
We have the humidity.
So
of
our
heat.
tarmac doesn't melt?
No,
It's
just
wet?
sweats.
Sweaty.
I mean, when the wind blows, it's hot air. It's literally
It's like, let me breathe on you for a minute.
Yeah. So anyway, what are we talking about today?
So today I tried to talk about something, but you said we talked about it last week. So I was like, okay, I won't talk about it again. Because really, last week we were talking about, I turned 50, we were talking about living in fear and doing things fearful. And I was just reminding myself this week that, starting a food truck at 50, just doing it afraid. And you had been doing this series called Phobia, and I was just going over that again and going, if you're going to do something, you do it afraid. And you said you're...
Really great message, by the way.
It was the greatest. No, I'm just kidding. But it was really good, and it just really gave me some inspiration. So, saying all that to say to do it, just do it afraid, meaning do it, period. I think you have to get to a place where you're done with everything else in order to do something afraid. Does that make sense? So I'm going to say this phrase, and you're going to be like, I beg to differ, because that's what you do to me. But I'm going to say this phrase, and I think it will get you to a place where you're just like, right or left, chemo, right or left. That's what we usually say, right? But if you get to a place where you've hit...
that movie's called
Stand and
Stand
Deliver.
and Deliver for all you movie buffs out there. Anyway, go ahead.
Because when we get to a place and we're driving or we need to make a decision and we need to make it ASAP, like right now, we're like, right or left, chemo, right or left, and that's what Edward James almost does in the movie because he's driving and he's going to hit something and he tells the kid riding with him, right or left, chemo, right or left, so anyway. So I think we get to that place in our life where we have to make a decision. And I think we've said this before, poop or get off the pot before your legs fall asleep, right? And
Great analogy.
okay, thanks. But I
don't think it's poop that we use. But anyway, go ahead.
Anyway, before you get to that place of making that final decision, I think you have to hit rock bottom. So I want to talk about that today, hitting rock bottom. Did I hit rock bottom? Anyway, no, I'm just kidding.
Well, I think it depends on what you mean by rock bottom.
Okay, I'm glad you said that. So go ahead, tell us, and I'm going to give you the definition of rock bottom.
What is rock bottom? What's the difference between hitting rock bottom and being in between a rock and a hard place?
I don't know. Let me say. It says rock bottom is a phrase often heard in a recovery meaning there is no further way down. Many people might think that this means it's the end of the road, but in fact, ask anyone who is successful and they will tell you that hitting rock bottom was actually the beginning of the road to recovery. They needed to get to that point in order to find the resolve to really get to where they were going. Okay, so I wanted to talk about that because, in my prayer and because you were like, well, I'll be in agreement for whatever you're in agreement in the truck. If you are believing for success, then great. If you're believing for failure, then great. I'll believe that too. Kind of what you always say when people say they have a headache. You're like, well, here, what would you like for me to pray with you about? How sick would you like to be? Would you like to have cancer? Would you like to have just a brain tumor? Would you like to have, and I'm making light of that, but that's really what he used to do. Because you have to make them make a decision. What do you want me to be in agreement with you for? Because just thinking about that, maybe that's what
I was a boss. I was gangster.
And what happened?
Oh, I still gangster. It's just low key now.
Why?
That's why we're talking about it right now, is because I'm so gangster. Super gangster.
Anyway, somebody's getting a big head.
No, I'm gangster.
Oh, okay.
I'm not having a big head. I'm humbly admitting my confidence.
Whoa, okay.
So, keep going.
Well, I have no confidence, so, But just saying that to say, see, I lost my whole train of thought. But saying that when you hit rock bottom, or you were saying, about us believing whatever we were believing for, if we're believing for success on the truck, if we're believing for no success, if we're believing that no one show up, or are we believing for a certain number? What were we believing for so that you could be in agreement with us for that thing? And I think, trial and error comes with everything. It's the same as getting to the place of hitting rock bottom. When you get to the bottom, there's nowhere else for you to go. You just start grasping for straws, and this is what came to my head. That's why I said we got to talk about it. So I was thinking about that phrase, rock bottom, and I was like, well, if you're at the bottom, and it's rock bottom. Why do they call it rock bottom? It's because what you said, between a rock and a hard place. What are the difference between those two phrases, right? But before I ask you to, break that down for me, let me tell you where I was. I was like, immediately, y'all, movie line. Immediately, I thought of Finding Nemo, when they're at the bottom of the sea and it's super dark, right? To me, that's rock bottom. And then they saw the light and they were like, oh, it's so pretty. Oh, it's making me happy. Oh, and it ended up being a fish, and he was dangling this light there, and they were going for it, and the fish was, and was going to eat them. And so it made me think of that, and I was like, when you're at rock bottom, it's the darkest place that you've ever been. And I think at that point, you have to make a decision. Are you going to, and this is what I was going to talk about. You have to make a decision whether to live or to die. End of story. That's it. You have to make a decision, right or left.
Sink or swim.
Sink or swim. That's what you say. But I watched a movie, and don't go watch this movie, but it was just, we were trying to kill time on the truck, and we were just looking for a movie. But we watched this movie about this lady, and she is the big 50 too, because, I turned big 50, but her name was Big 50. And it was her story, and she was saying that she had gotten to a place of depression that was so low that she was just laying there dying. She wouldn't eat, she wouldn't drink, she wouldn't do anything. And then she decided to pick up a Bible and read it. And then that started to give her life, right? So to me, that was rock bottom, that she decided to reach for something. She could have just laid there and withered and died, but she had to decide whether she was going to live or whether she was going to die. And I feel like when we get to that place of rock bottom, that we're forced to make a decision, because most times we don't want to make a decision.
Most people won't.
Yeah, yeah.
I say this all the time, that making a decision or not making a decision.
It's still a decision.
So you either make a decision or you don't make a decision. But even when we don't make a decision, we've made a decision. And that's the part that most people linger. That's where most people camp out and that's why, honestly, that's where procrastination kicks in, is because we won't make a decision. And the reason
Why?
for many reasons, it could be fear, it could be unknowing, it could be inexperience, it could really, and also on the other side of it, it could be us knowing exactly how much responsibility it is. So we don't want to take any of that responsibility. We don't want to pay what it's going to cost. We avoid the decision or stepping into something because we know how much it's going to take. I'm guilty of that. Like I'll put things off. I'll put things off because I know how much it's going to cost me or what it's going to cost to get into it. So I'll I don't want to do that because it's going to cost me more than I want to pay. And so I think those are some of the reasons. But when you talk about hitting rock bottom, I think one of the things that we have to understand is that sometimes it's not just hitting rock bottom. So when you talk about hitting rock bottom, literally it has to do with the term of finding a foundation or hitting the bottom. So like when you're thinking like you were talking about
like
the
a
ocean.
jackhammer.
Yeah, so like when you're digging a hole, you hit bedrock. You can't get once you hit the bedrock, that's it. Like you're gonna have to. It's gonna be harder to even go deeper than bedrock. That's why it's called bedrock. So that is the most solid piece of land or earth that there is bedrock, right? So when you hit rock bottom, that means that you've gone through all the dirt, all the sand, all the
Layers.
gravel, and you're at the bedrock.
Buffets have layers.
Yeah, you're at the very, very bottom, right? Like you're at the rock bottom. But there's another term or another phrase I mentioned a second ago, which is between a rock and a hard place. And so I like to think it like this. When you find yourself between a rock and a hard place, if Jesus is your rock, then the hard place has to give. So most of us never get to that place, or we never realize that Jesus is our rock. But when you can realize that Jesus is our rock, he is the way, the truth, the life. Like when you get there, now I'm preaching, but when you get there, then you say, okay, then if he doesn't make it work, then it's either me not doing something right or it's not his will. Right? And so that's a place.
We say that quite often.
And that's a place that we don't really like to get to.
Because we don't want to take responsibility.
Because we don't take responsibility, because that's the hardest thing for us to do, is say, okay, well, I'm going to do this. And so for me, going back to what you were saying before, was like, okay, well, I have a headache or I'm sick or, okay, so what are we agreeing with? What am I agreeing with you with? So like for myself, helping you guys with the truck and doing breakfast. So when I get up in the morning and we're setting up, I'm like, God, I thank you that we're selling burritos this morning.
Yes.
I thank you for all the burritos that we're going to sell. Like I'm already praying and thanking God for that. So for me, if I don't sell any burritos, I probably haven't prayed. If I'm not making any sales, I haven't prayed. That's just how I process. The same thing when it goes to starting the church. If I'm not praying for the church, if I'm not praying for our staff, if I'm not praying for the people that are serving, the people that are giving, if I'm not praying for the maturing of the church, the growth of the church, if I'm not praying for new people, that's not anybody else's responsibility in this congregation or in this church. That's not it. When I say it's not anybody's responsibility, it's not anybody's sole responsibility. Because one of the things that we've learned at Riverside is that there are things that I'm responsible for and that nobody else can do. Yeah. And then there are things that some people can do, and then there are things that other people can do. Now anybody can do. So that we're all responsible and called to pray for the church, but it's ultimately my responsibility because I'm the one that God called to do this. And that's the part that I think a lot of times people struggle with, is because we do things and we're not sure if we're called to do them, if we're supposed to do them. We do them because they're a good idea, but not necessarily because they're a God idea. And so that's the wrestling part, is like, man, okay, am I going to do this? Am I going to pray for this? Am I going to believe God for this? And am I going to do it afraid? Or I should say, do you get to that place where you're at rock bottom, or do you get to that place where you're like, okay, sink or swim. Like, this is either going to work or it's not. You know, and
And if it doesn't
if
work,
it
then we
doesn't-
blame ourselves?
it's either blame yourself. I mean, because I think that's the thing, because we don't like that responsibility. Because are you going to blame God? I mean, that's the only other option, right? We can blame the people that are helping us, the people that are not helping us, the people that are supporting us, the people that are not supporting us. I remember a really good friend of mine, you know, he was going to start a church, and he was going to do church a little bit different. And I just told him, I said, even you starting this church, I looked at him across the table, and I said, listen, you have to know that God's calling you to start this church to the point where even if your wife and your children and your family and your best friends and the people that are closest to you do not support you, they do not attend your church, they do not give, they do not involve themselves with the church, are you still going to start the church? Because if you're not, then you probably should not start the church. Or you need to question if God's actually calling you to do this.
Or are you trying to do it?
Are you trying to do this?
Take
Because if God
responsibility.
calls you to do this, then you'll do exactly what the scripture says. You'll lay everything aside to respond. And that's the place that most of us don't like going, because we look at the cost, we look at the price, and we just haven't hit rock bottom yet, or we haven't got to that place where it's a rock and a hard place. And so we're just like, I'm still okay. I'm okay. But when you start moving towards what God's calling you to do, we have been mistaught in thinking it's going to be easy because we're Christians, because we know the Word, because we know the Bible, because we have a relationship with God, because we're filled with the Holy Ghost, because all water, like you can just go down the list. We have this list of check boxes that we do because we're believers, so we're exempt from all the trials. We're exempt from the doubt. We're exempt from all this stuff, right? And the truth of the matter is that when we start facing those obstacles and those issues, pushing us back and pushing us to rock bottom, we have to make a decision. Do we believe that God's called us to do this? And if so, what's our part? What's our responsibility? And if he hasn't, do we need to abandon it? Is it just a good idea? And those are the things that we wrestle with. And so until you can get to that place to where you I know, not like I know, but like I know this is what I'm supposed to do. And so for me, just with the church, that's been the biggest struggles, because I see the obstacles, I see the issues, I see things that we're working against, I see things working against us, but yet I'm going, I got to do this. Regardless of how hard it gets, I have to do this because I'm going to have to give an account to this. I'm responsible for this thing. And I can't blame the devil. I can't blame my wife. I can't blame my kids. I can't blame the staff. I can't blame anything except for myself for not doing what I'm supposed to do. And that's where it gets hard, because now you're like, okay, so who's responsible for this? Well,
nobody likes to take responsibility for
anything?
anything. So,
You're absolutely right.
that's the worst part about it. And let me finish this article.
Okay, finish your article. Sorry.
No, it was really good.
Got on a
Thank you.
tangent.
Yeah, you did. So this is what rock bottom means. It means that someone is sick and tired of feeling sick and tired. It is that they can see no hope for the present or any sort of future. They are desperate. And the word desperate is from Latin, desperatus, which means deprived of hope. That is why it is often said by mental health experts that the first thing anyone suffering who reaches out for help needs to be given is hope. And this is actually for Alcoholics Anonymous, because the AA, they're in their AA, it's usually used, there is a solution. Because when we hit rock bottom, I think we give up. Like what I was saying with Big 50, she was either going to die or live, and the Bible says that God says, I give you life or death. If I were you, I'd choose life, but we mainly don't want to take responsibility, so we take ourselves out.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
It's because life is hard.
Okay, life is hard, but as if he didn't, okay. I'm just saying, he got beat on the cross, for us, and, he died for us. People mocked him. He got stabbed in his side. If you think your life is tough, you might want to take a look at something else. And I'm preaching to myself. I'm not even preaching to y'all, so, Anyway, if you thought that was for you, it's not. It's for me.
Well, it's hard because it boils down to responsibility.
Yes, and I don't like that. Okay, and that's what it says. Rock bottom is when a person feels emotionally overwhelmed and broken. They will frequently feel flattened with hardly any energy. Again, depression tries to sit in when you're at rock bottom. They will most likely feel terrified, even if they do their best to deny that. Frequently, almost all of this is going on inside of them. Many people who are suffering like this do not want it to be known. And it says, so they suffer alone, yet they are terrified because they have tried everything that they can think of, and yet inside they are utterly beaten down. Rock bottom can last from days to years. There can be many contributions leading to one, including having an injury or illness, breakup, suffering, a trauma, bereavement, economic insecurity, excessive stress, job loss, or business failure. Y'all, it made me think of that. I am actually reading a book about a homeless guy who started a taco truck, and I thought it would give me some inspiration.
But we don't sell tacos. Sorry, inside joke. Go ahead.
Anyway. Wait. That was good. That was real funny. Clearly. But I was just thinking about this book, and when I was reading it, he had no hopelessness. I mean, he had no hope. And so he was homeless because he chose to be, and he just could not get himself out of it. And I'm at that part right now in the book, and I'm thinking, well, then how did you start the taco truck, right? So I haven't gotten there yet, so I can't tell you about it, but it's a really good book so far. I'm only in the first few pages, and I'm in chapter 2, and it's just tough, because I never know when somebody's going to come to the window, so I got to look up and be like, oh, and then I go back and read, no, I got to look up. But it just made me think of this and being at rock bottom. What are you choosing to do in this situation? If you're in, stuck, because a lot of people like to use that, stuck. What?
I've got a new series coming out.
What's it called?
Stuck.
Hey!
So if you want
Shameless plug.
Shameless plug. A couple of weeks, we got a new series coming. It's called Stuck. Right now, we are doing Trust the Process with Jeremy and Amanda. So check that out. Sorry. Thank you for that commercial break.
Oh, you're welcome. And we're back. So just saying that it just made me think of hitting rock bottom and knowing that when you're down at rock bottom, really, you've hit the very bottom. Now, like you said, that's the foundation. So now that all the junk is out of the way and all the layers are out of the way, I think that you can stand on the rock, just like you said. And if we're not praying, how can we see the light that makes us feel good inside and that, won't eat us up? Because hope doesn't eat you, obviously, like a fish.
That's what I'm saying.
But hope, yeah.
Yeah, hope is... Hope, hitting that hard place, getting to that place where you're just like, man, you're almost out of hope or you're out of hope, like I was talking about. Mm-hmm. But understanding there is hope. Like, everything's in season. Like, it might be tough, but it's not going to be tough forever. Right?
Like broke is temporary. We've said that before, too.
Yep.
Y'all, I'm just reminding myself of these things. That's all. And that's why I'm having a conversation with all of you, because these are the conversations that go through my heads. But I did not hit rock bottom. Calm down. It just made me think of that dark place.
She can see it from where she's at, though.
Hello. No.
I think I see something down there.
What is that? Type thing. No, I have hope and all of that, but I guess I'm just going back to what happened. Our generator getting stolen, and
it's tough.
Yeah, and a startup is always tough, and. What? Tell me.
No, it's anytime you do anything new, anything that you haven't done, when you start anything.
New is bad.
No,
I'm just kidding.
It's tough because in your mind, in your hope, in your excitement, in the people around you, they don't address everything that's going to go wrong.
Yeah.
They don't address all the problems.
That's the key.
It's wedding bells, silver lining. It's everything just beautiful, glitz and glamour and glitter and unicorns and rainbows. But the truth of the matter is, before you have a rainbow, you've got to have a storm. Mm-hmm. You've got to deal with the rain, right? And so even when you're doing things, and I think a lot about just with the church, like the different seasons that we've been at the church. I talk to pastors all the time, and I have a handful of pastors that will be like, man, my staff is not doing good. Like my staff is doing bad. They're making bad decisions. Offerings are low. Attendance is like I can literally name them on one hand, the pastors that will be transparent and say, ministry is not going well.
Yeah.
Church is not going
Well,
well.
ministry is spelled
most-
W-O-R-K.
Yeah. And so most people approach life in that manner. They never let you peek into everything that's going wrong. Everything's always good. Everything's always doing great. And there's not a struggle. And I'm learning as a pastor, as a man, as a husband, as a father, to be even more transparent than I haven't been in the past, because that's really where I get my strength, is going, look, I don't have it together. I don't know what we should do, and in that the people rally around with you, encourage you, helping you, give hope. But I think a lot of times we just want to give that superficial, everything's good, Jesus is great, and Jesus is Lord, and never really want to admit, like, I'm in a storm, I'm having financial problems, I'm having health problems, I'm having mental problems, I'm having emotional problems. We never address those things until we hit rock bottom. And so when you do that, you actually get there faster. And you're when you can simply avoid it by just going, look, man, I'm having a tough time. And I think when you're doing startups, that's the thing, is like when you're starting something new, you've got all these things, like you're literally swimming against the current. Because there's so many people that do it, and and what I think is funny, and if this is you, I love you, I'm not mad at you, I think it's funny, but what I think is funny is that every time you or Jesse talk to somebody about the food truck, everybody has great ideas on what you need to do. Like, you guys need to do this, and y'all guys need to do that. And I'm like, no, you're not here with them going through all this junk. That's not what they need to do. Matter of fact, that's probably not even what they want to hear right now. But, and
I'm like, you gonna fund this?
So,
I didn't think so.
So it's like that in so many areas of our life. But because we're not transparent and sharing, it's hard for people to understand really where we're at and what we're going through. Even in your case, in Jesse's case, even with starting this thing, looks really good. We're going to do all this, and God already said this. God said this. This is God's
but
will.
we got to keep putting
But
that
you gotta-
before our face, like right here.
Like because he said it, but he didn't say when.
yeah.
He didn't say how much you're going to have to work, how much you're going to sweat, how much blood, it's tough. And
Well,
so-
in all this work, could I just lose some weight? Jeez,
That's
come on,
that
Lord.
sounds like a personal problem.
I'm just saying. Look at the time. No, I'm just kidding. Anyway, thank you guys. If that is you and that was for you about hitting rock bottom, please don't be afraid to talk to someone. Reach out to someone and say, I'm at a bad place right now, and I just need some prayer, or I need you to pray with me. And if you're that one that's praying for somebody that has said that, don't send them a text message and just say, I'm praying for you. Literally write them out a prayer and send it to them. You don't know how desperate they are and what they need.
Or make a phone call. Phone calls are always better than text.
Yes.
A text is better than nothing, but a phone call is better than a text.
I know. And for those of you who don't like phone calls, they're not outdated. They're worth hearing somebody's voice on the other side.
And we'll be discussing that in our next podcast. Phone calls.
Phone calls. All right. Anyway, thank you guys for listening to us. Thanks for staying with us through all of this and listening to my rants. But I tell y'all, something always happens in a week, and I just have these thoughts, especially when I'm in my car and driving.
go.
That's my prayer closet. So, So, anyway, love you guys. Thanks.
Peace out. Holla at y'all.
Thank you for listening to the Riverside Weekly. Download the Riverside Waco app to stay connected and follow us on all social media sites at the Riverside Waco. This podcast is made possible by the givers of Riverside Community Church. Production and engineering provided by Capital G and RTV in Waco, Texas.